Hello there. My name is Alex Zhu. I'm a math teacher at Walker Middle School, um, and I was going through the Canvas course and the Beyond Basic, and I was working on some quizzes, and I discovered something really cool if you're a math or science teacher. And I shared it with Misty, and she wanted me to make this video of it, so here I go. Uh, Hopefully, you can understand what I'm doing here. So it's a quiz. So if you go to quizzes, I'm going to add a quiz here. And we're just going to title it over on the side, just to practice. And these things are called formula quizzes, and they're really great for math and science teachers because the idea of it is that you're taking a question and you're going to create multiple questions out of it because you're using a formula. So you can sign up. Points is 100. A lot of this stuff, I mean, it's kind of separate. You're using the external tool. I'm just gonna put some random due date for now, uh, you know. And so either way, so when you go to quizzes, okay, there's a lot of different quizzes that Canvas has. Um, you have your basic multiple choice. You have multiple answers, fill in the blank, categorization, matching, formula. And so the one I'm going to use is formula. And I think as a math teacher, this is really great. So it says, enter your question, build a formula, and generate a set of possible answer combinations. Students will see the question with a randomly selected set of variables filled in and have to type the correct numerical answer. So it says the way it's worded, the question is you can define the variables by typing variable names surrounded by the backtext. So for example, what is 5 plus x? So I'm going to go ahead and use a kind of a middle school math example and then also a middle school, like a science example as well, and kind of give you an idea of how this can work. So I'm going to pull up a question. This is a 7th grade math question, but again, this actually is just kind of a harder version of like an elementary school math question, so I think it works pretty well. So I'm going to use this one here. Laura was late to class 5 times in September. Each time she was late, she missed 4.8 minutes of class. How many total minutes of class did she miss in September? So I'm going to see if I can copy it over or just type it in. Laura was late to class 5 times to class 5 times. Each time she missed 4.8 minutes. She missed 4.8 minutes of class. How many minutes did she miss in September? And so even most of us, we can understand. Oh, I didn't mean to type it there actually. That's the formula. So hold on. So I'm going to type it here, the question. Formula, this is the question title, so I'm just going to name it multiplication word problem. Okay, so we have our question. Laura was late to class 5 times in September. Each time she missed 4.8 minutes of class. How many minutes did she miss in September? So if, most of us, I think we can understand if we wanted to figure out how many minutes she missed 5 times. Each time was 4.8 minutes. You just multiply 5 times 4.8 and gets you the answer, which I believe comes out to 24 minutes. But that only creates you one question, right? So the idea of the formula question is going to give you an opportunity to create multiple questions if you create it using a formula. So this one is a basic one. So all you have to do is you take what is the value and replace it with a variable. So for example, I don't want this to be, say, 5. I want this to just kind of be any number. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to put in my backticks. Your backtick is next to the number 1. It's the very left button on next to 1. So it's going to be like this one little here. So I'm going to put X. And I'm going to use this first time as X and then a second backtick, kind of closing, like almost like you're closing a parentheses. So now it says Laura was late to class X times in September. Okay? Each time she missed 4.8 minutes of class. Now I can keep the 4.8 minutes if I wanted to just figure out how many 4.8 minutes it is, okay? Or I can make this kind of even a little bit more, more intense. Oh, hold on. Let's go backwards for a second. Let me talk about this. If I just do this, each time she missed 4.8 minutes of class, how many minutes did she miss in September? Then we can come up with the equation down here. So when you put in the variable, it gives you this on the variable. Like if I don't have that, you don't see it. It's only whenever I put the backticks in and define a variable that this shows up. And so what this does, it gives you a set of range to put in numbers. So for example, you can have the quiz give the student any number from 0 to 10, right? You can also say if you want decimals or not. Obviously, since we're saying a specific times in September, we want it to, one, be positive, so we don't want this number to be less than 0. So in fact, let's even make it 1, right? Since she would have to be at least late one time. And then let's say give him the max of 10, so that should be fine. If I wanted to use this equation, I just have to think to myself, how would I solve it, right? This is the part where you kind of have to use your math brain for yourself. Well, I had 5 times in September. She missed 4.8 minutes of class. I would multiply to 2. So now use that same concept and create the question. So if I know it was supposed to be 5 multiply 4.8, right? Instead of 5 now, it's simply x. So I would do x times 4.8, correct? And then it comes down to here. This is the cool part. It's talking about generating possible solutions. So if you notice, the default is actually 200 solutions. So if you want to go ahead and do this, you can create, and press generate, you can create at least up to 200 if they can create it. This kind of, it says we can only able to find 4 solutions. But see what it's done here, right? It's, for example, it says it could be 4. So for example, Laura was late to class 4 times in September. Each time she missed 4.8 minutes of class. Now one thing I do realize I need to do is that obviously if it's just simply 4 times 4.8, right now I didn't put any decimals. So that means I should probably go ahead and, since we're working with decimals, let's make it 2 decimal places. So when I create my answers, right, if it's, for example, if it was 7, it comes out to 33.6, right, and not just 33. So that gives you a more accurate answer. It says there's only 10 solutions because obviously we set the limit of they can only be late from 1 to 10 times. If you change this around, you can see we can do some different things with it. The margin of error means simply like if you wanted to give students a chance to say, oh, I want them in this range because maybe they're doing something that's not exact. On this particular problem, they're really just multiplying. So obviously, I think you want it to be an exact amount. So we don't want any margin of error. You can display it as a scientific notation actually if you were doing like a science problem. So we'll kind of look at that here in a little bit. And then if you want it absolute or percent, I think most part you're going to want it absolute. So that's the idea of it, right? We have x times 4.8. Now I'm going to kind of change the other thing. So it says each time she missed 4.8 minutes of class. So instead of, let's say, each time she for sure misses 4.8, I want to make this a little bit more challenging. And what you can do with this, you can create so many more problems out of this. So I'm going to define the variable, define 4.8 as a variable now. So I delete that. I put in my backtick, remember, which is next to your 1. And I'm going to use this variable of y, right? We want to use different variables. And I will say this, I'm an algebra teacher, so for me, using variables is natural. I know if you're an elementary school teacher or you're someone who doesn't teach a lot with algebra, this can be kind of tricky. But I think the biggest thing is think of this as concepts, right? You want them to work on the process of multiplication here. So how would you think of it, right? I always tell my students when it comes to algebra, always define the value first and then think of the abstract. You take the concrete and change it to the abstract. So I'm going to change it to y minutes. So if we know we said x times 4.8 whenever it's 4.8 minutes, what do we need to change it to 4.8 to now? Right? We want to change it to y because now we're saying it's y minutes. Now, the other thing we want to do is want to change obviously the minutes, right? Right now it's saying 0 to 10. But since we're working with time, we also should know that it can go up to 60 minutes. So let's do 60, right? And then since it's decimals, let's give it 2 decimals. So they could be anywhere from, let's change this to 1 instead of 0. Otherwise, you're going to get a question which is multiplied by 0. Like it could be like 5.7 minutes, it could be 12.4 minutes. So like, like something specific there. Actually, well, we can make it. I guess we can make it however hard you want. You can just go 1 decimal place. Um, yeah, let's go 1 decimal place since the question was 1 decimal place. Not give them too much moving the decimal for you. Okay, so let's do x times y. Now, if you really think about it, now that we're defining two different variables, we should be able to create a lot more answers, or a lot more questions. So let's see if we go 200, if we can create 200. Okay, and see, now you can, because it's using all the different possibilities of all these numbers, whether it's from 1 through 10 or 1 through 60 for the minutes. So now what I love about this is it does a couple things. Let's say if I wanted this in the class of my class of 30, I can now give each student a specific question. With like, it's the same question, but now you're giving each of them their own version of it, because now they have to understand, what am I doing? Yes, if you understand the problem, you know it's the minutes multiplied by how many times they were late. But now they can't copy, right? And then I think in this times, I think that will be extremely useful for you. And secondly, it now tests the students, do they really understand how to do this? Not only is this great, it also will be so perfect for you when you want to make retakes, right? So for example, when you're doing retakes in the future, well, now you can take the same question and you can switch out the numbers, right? They can have a different question each different time now. You don't have to go ahead and try to recreate the whole thing, because now this thing does it for you. So now let me show you what it looks like on the student side. So I'm going to click done. And whenever I can go up here to preview. And so it says Laura was late to class 4 times in September. Each time she missed 5.4 minutes of class. How many minutes did she miss in September? Do you see how we never used, obviously that was not the original question, but now it's like they'll see this. Each student will see their own version of this question. So in this case, they have 4 times in September. Each time she missed 5.4 minutes of class. So again, we know we're multiplying x times y. So 4 times 5.4, so if I double 5.4, that's 10.8 times 2 is 21.6. So they would miss 21.6 minutes in September. Upon submission, you would not be able to change your answer. Are you ready to submit? We are. And it will try to auto-grade it for you. And yeah, see, we got it right. Okay. But now let's say if I wanted to do this again. Yeah, see, you see how this completely different question now? Laura was late to class 8 times in September. She missed 8.3 minutes of class. It's using the format of that question, the skeleton of the question, and it's using all these those numbers that you want to put in for it. That's what I love about formula quizzes, is that you're creating yourself a test bank of millions of answers, of questions that you can use, and that each student can do their own thing. Yes, they're still answering the same problem, but now you don't have to worry about changing numbers. Like I said, I think this would be great if you have online, you're trying to prevent cheating. I think it limits that. Plus, if you just use what you have, you can create, you can use all these questions from whatever resource that you have and make all these separate questions, right? Into a quiz, into a test, whatever it may be, into a formative assessment. So that's a math example. Let me use a science example as well, just to kind of show you how this works for that. So I'm going to use an 8th grade science example because I know they do physics. So then I'll use this question here. The net force on a vehicle that is accelerating at a rate of 1.5 meters per second squared is 1,800 newtons. What is the mass of the vehicle to the nearest kilogram? Let's see if I can copy this over. Open. Formula quiz. Let's say physics question. So we type in our question. All right. Accelerating at a rate of 1.5 meters per second squared is 1,800 newtons. What is the mass of the vehicle to the nearest kilogram? So let's do it the same way, right? We're wanting to to create some different questions. So let's go ahead and define both of those values with different variables. So I'm going to go ahead and change this, since it's 1.5 meters per second squared, this is accelerating. Why not, for me, just go ahead and define it as a, right, for acceleration. So I'm going to use my backtick. Remember, it's next to the left of 1. So a is a meters per second squared is 1800 newtons, and we know newtons is referring to the mass, the force here. Force is acting on it. So let's make this F then, variable F. What is the mass of the vehicle, since that's what we're looking for? So this is, right, hopefully I know some of us don't deal with physics, but this is simply force equals mass times acceleration, right? So, let's make the force. I mean, that one's 1800, so we can make the force pretty large. Let's get it, let's say we want it between 1,000 and 3,000. Give it a pretty large force. Let's not make that one decimals, but we'll make this one decimals. That one was 1.5 meters per second squared, so let's keep it low. Let's go from, I don't know, 1. No, let's go 0. That's fine. They probably won't show up 1. To say 10, that's fine. And then let's just make it, obviously, can be even just 1 decimal place will work. So now again, let's think about the question. If we know in the equation is force equals mass times acceleration. Okay. What is the mass of the vehicle to the nearest kilogram? Assuming you don't know how to solve this equation, since you have the force and you have the acceleration, to get the mass by itself. Since mass is being multiplied by acceleration, you want to divide the acceleration to get the mass by itself. It's kind of basic algebra, but really the equation you want is force divided by acceleration. Okay, let's see if hopefully I did this right. This one I'm going to make 50 solutions. Cool. All right. So now you have all your questions, right? And you have, so for example, it can be read as the net force on a vehicle that is accelerating at a rate of 8.6 meters per second squared is 1,717 newtons. Oh, I just realized since I was using decimal places, I need decimals. Let's make this too. Yeah. This one you might want to give it a bit of a margin of an error, just simply because if you're using decimals, and depending on how they round, there might be a situation where you might just give them the benefit of doubt. But it's up to you. I'll just put that in so you can kind of see it. So let's generate. Okay. So we can create our 50 questions, or however many you want. Yeah, you can show it to the on-screen calculator, and that's pretty, so that way they have that there. So let's keep that on. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, when you align to outcomes is if you go ahead, Misty has a video showing this where you can put in teak, so you can put in the teak to this, so you can kind of track it, and then put this in your item bank as well. And the item bank will allow you to kind of use this forever. So this is actually the question that it kind of shows up as. The net force on a vehicle that is accelerating at a rate of 9.5 meters per second squared is 2336 newtons. What is the mass of the nearest kilogram? And so that will give you the answer here. And again, if you just go to preview, you see it's a completely new, not new question, but again, one with different numbers. So that's how you can use formula quizzes to grade yourself, a lot of different questions. And I think what I love most about this is that it simply forces the students to actually understand what they're doing, right? If they need a lot of practice, you can use this and you can give them a whole lot of practice, right? Because you can change the numbers up on them. You can create it with multiple times. And I think this is, especially if you're a math and science teacher, I think this is very valuable. And I think especially when you're assigning work for them, where it is like almost like a rote scale at times, this is great because again, I know with older kids it's easier. They're when some of them don't know what they're doing, they're gonna look out for someone else. We're gonna ask someone else, right? this tells them, hey, if your neighbor wants to help you, they need to make sure they know what they're doing, right? They need to tell you that, oh, I'm multiplying, I'm dividing the force by the acceleration to get the mass, right? And you're gonna get a different answer than I am, but that doesn't mean you're not doing it correctly. So I think I think formula quizzes are great, and I think you can get a lot of benefit from using these. If you need any assistance, please email me. Um, I went ahead and showed this to Misty. I think I'm sure she'll figure this out as well. But I'll be happy to help you set this up if you ever have any questions with it. Um, so thank you for listening. I appreciate that. Hopefully you got something out of it. All right, bye.